I have a very special guest today and also a good friend and a great Territorian. I have the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, the newly appointed Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Minister Selena Uibo. Welcome.
Thank you, Donna. It's really great to be here with you.
Now, you're also the Minister for Education and also for workforce training.
Yes, that's correct.
First of all, I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Because as an Indigenous woman and a Territorian, it says a lot for the value of our Indigenous women and also about leadership capability and capacity to handle such a big portfolio. What are your thoughts on Aboriginal Affairs as your portfolio?
It is very exciting. It's 7 days in, so I've had the portfolio for a week. As you mentioned, I have education and workforce training. I've had those two portfolios for the last 7 months. So a very exciting opportunity. I know it comes with, of course, a huge set of challenges, and of course, in terms of the population of the Northern Territory, and a third of our Territorians are Aboriginal, and there's a big expectation, of course, of whoever holds the Aboriginal Affairs portfolio. So they're things that I'm fully aware of going into this role. But as you mentioned, opening up opportunities and the dialogue and the conversations we can have for Aboriginal women in leadership, it's a very exciting role to be in. And I have the Aboriginal Affairs portfolio, have been prior having had experience in as the Assistant Minister and working in that area and that space. So for me, it's a big challenge, but it's something, as I said, I'm ready for, and something I've had exposure to. And of course, being Aboriginal Territorian myself, the lived experience that I have is something that will help me through the portfolio.
And we cross paths quite a lot because we're obviously in that space of Aboriginal Affairs, and particularly with our passion and our loyalty to the Northern Territory. Now, what do you see as some of your key challenges at this point? I know it's early days, but...
I think that when we hear Aboriginal Affairs portfolio, we think of everything to do with the challenges that Aboriginal people face. So housing, health, education, infrastructure, law and justice, employment, a vast array of areas. So what can I do in that role is something that I've been pondering, and I've spoken with the Chief Minister about clarifying a couple of key focus areas. We have a year and a half until the next Northern Territory election, so I want to continue on the commitment that we've made as a Northern Territory government in the space of local decision making, land and sea economic development, and of course, as you know, the big conversation about treaty. The Chief Minister is taking carriage of treaty, which I think is fantastic. It's a whole of territory conversation to be had. So he will be leading that space, and of course me now in Aboriginal Affairs portfolio to be working alongside him here in the Territory in the space of treaty. It's very exciting. So I've spoken to the Chief Minister in the areas I'd like to focus on, so local decision making, jobs and employment for Aboriginal Territorians, and also homelands. I think it's an area that although a lot of what we do is reliant on the federal funding that we receive, I think it's time we start taking a bit more carriage of what we can do locally, and then hopefully the feds come to the table and we can focus on delivering the best outcomes for our Aboriginal Territorians on homelands.
Absolutely, and we are hearing from communities themselves, about how positive, especially rolling out the new housing that's happening, and the job creation around that. So that's extremely important and also exciting. And we're hearing that from not only leaders but people in the community. And as you say, having this bipartisan approach is really, really important, particularly in that area, in our area of Aboriginal Affairs. Now, you come from a very accomplished background of education, and I wasn't quite aware until I had a bit of a read before we caught up today.
Yes.
And I think it's important to, if you could just give us a bit of insight, because I know that our people listening in, we see your face out there as the Minister, but the backstory to you is that you're quite accomplished in those areas of education, leadership, and also, driving agendas for Indigenous women and girls.
Thank you, Donna. I feel very privileged to have had the support, particularly from family and friends in my journey that's brought me here to where I am today as being a young Aboriginal woman holding 3 ministerial portfolios in the Northern Territory Labor Government. I think my journey, my parents are both teachers and very passionate about education. They were both principals at different stages of life. So I've grown up with education and being a bit of a lifeline and a bloodline in our immediate family. And then having positive experiences at school myself as a student here in the Territory. I studied a bachelor and then I went to Malac and then Sanderson and Casuarina Senior College. So between bachelor and Darwin growing up. And then, of course, the strong connection on my mother's side, the Noongarbuyu side, and the Wanadiliaqua side from Groot and Numbulwar. That sense of empowerment and leadership and community respect, I think, is really important for me. And I'd like to think that all of those values that my family have given me is something that I take into my everyday life and, of course, into my professionalism as a minister. But definitely something I had in my mind is when I was a teacher for 5 years, 1 year here in Darwin and 4 years out in Numbulwar in my mum's community in southeast Arnhem Land. So following on from those key values that I've been brought up with, that I've established myself as an adult, and then in the space of being a member of Parliament is something that I hope that resonates with the everyday duties that I do. And of course, when I get to be just normal Selena and part of the family, it's always there. So it's really important to me that upbringing and the values that have been instilled from my family.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. And it's good to have that connection with yourself because, you touched on so many things, family values, connection, putting back into community. And as the Minister now for Aboriginal Affairs, we as the Aboriginal people of the Northern Territory really value, that you have that on-the-ground connection. And also, I see you out there in the communities, and I also see you at other forums. And I think it's important to also acknowledge that, with the bigger picture of developing the Northern Territory into the future and looking at new spaces for our young ones and our adults to actually get into different career pathways. Do you also see that as something that is an important focus to have?
I think so, Donna, definitely. Something that I think we as Aboriginal people know is we're really good at code switching. So the environments that we work in, the context that we operate in, whether it's family obligations, whether it's professional life, whether it's home life, Aboriginal people have been very, very, very clever in working out what the codes are and being able to switch, in the different environments. So I think for me, the challenge and the excitement of being able to operate in various different spaces, home life, community life, in my electorate as a local member, in Parliament as a member of Parliament, and now being a minister who represents the whole of the Northern Territory, and having those different code switching experiences. It's something that I think a lot of Aboriginal people do naturally and aren't always aware of it. So it's something that I've sort of become more specifically aware of as I've grown into my role as a member of Parliament and then now into a minister, that importance of being able to understand and operate in different contexts.
And I think that's one of our strong points.
Definitely.
And I think we need to be reminded of that as well.
And it's a skill. I don't think a lot of people realise that it's actually a really valuable skill.
Well, it is, and it underlies even when you're looking at and approaching, education and different teaching methods, exactly. And then going on to, as part of your portfolio too, if you're looking at workplace and training and then, having to deal with issues on homelands, etc., and have to navigate things around education, language. Absolutely. And also just negotiation skills, and I think it's really important and it's good that you've actually raised that, because we need to be reminded. We have this ability. We've come from a place of deep cultural and spiritual affiliation, but also challenging, also survival. So I think that's really important to keep a mind on for us as your constituents, as I'm saying. So with you just touched on treaty, and I know that you have been assistant minister in Aboriginal Affairs, which has been great, and is great that you've progressed to where you are now. But it's something close to my heart, and it's good to see that treaty is now being, or at least addressing treaty is happening in the Northern Territory. I think some good things can come out of that. Now, also, Minister, can you just, if there's any message that you want to actually, pass out to our people who are listening or watching?
The struggles and the challenges that are faced by Aboriginal people across the Territory are echoed across the rest of Australia, as you would know, and you're very well versed and travelled in the challenges. And it's interesting, I spent my couple of weeks break in Canada, and I got to visit the First Nations University over in Canada in Saskatchewan, and it was really interesting talking and hearing some of the challenges felt by First Nations people in Canada. And as we know, Maori New Zealanders and First Nations people in America, in the USA, have dealt with those same challenges that we deal with here. So I guess the biggest message I'd like to sort of share is that we're not alone in fighting for those challenges and recognising those struggles, but also wanting to deliver more opportunities and those platforms for success for Aboriginal people, whether it be business, education, employment, law and justice, and providing safe, happy communities for their children and their grandchildren and the next generation. So for me, I guess the biggest message is that you're not alone, and that we, as you said, we all have our own journey and experiences of wanting to make the lives of Aboriginal people better enhanced, and those opportunities, of course, in enriching the lives of Aboriginal Territorians. It's a big challenge, and if it was easy, everyone would do it. So it's all up to all of us to step up to that challenge. And if you're not the person stepping up, to be there walking alongside that person who is looking to blaze that trail, or to blaze that pathway that we can walk together on. I think it's really important, because we stand on the shoulders of decades of struggle. So I think it's really important that our future generations and our current generations continue to work together, because conquer and divide is what oppositions do, and when we start to fight amongst ourselves and not be a strong united front when we're looking at the challenges for Aboriginal people, that's when we're not going to get any traction, and we're not going to see the lives of Aboriginal people improve if we're not working together.
Absolutely, and that is a good note to close on. And Minister, if I can just reiterate, that shared responsibility is just so important. I mean, you as our ministerial representative, and we're seeing that. Ministers in other jurisdictions, whether it's New Zealand or, Canada or all around the world, Indigenous ministers, and particularly when they're women, I notice that they're, those kind of messages seem to have a uniformity about them. So we're all on the same page, as you say, pretty much. But yes. We wish you all the very best as a new minister, and are very confident that you can actually take us forward into the future to roll out some good directions and programs. And I thank you for coming to visit us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's lovely here, and of course it's all about our community and our family, so that's what will keep driving me in this role.